Shalom, I'm Rabbi Gail Schuster-Buskila, and today I'm going to discuss the 11th, and usually not read separately, Torah portion called Pekudei. It is usually combined with the previous Torah portion, Vayakhel, but in a leap year, when we have to catch up the lunar calendar, which is the Hebrew calendar, to the solar calendar and make everything fit, where we have 2 months of Adar, in this year, and that will mean that I need all the Torah portions, and lucky for me that I'm going to be able to talk about each and every one separately especially according to the Israeli cycle for reading the Torah. This is sort of a send-off. It is the end of a chapter in the journey from the land of Egypt and slavery, which has not really begun more than just a little bit at Sinai, and what's going to happen in the next few books, Leviticus, Numbers, and of course Deuteronomy. But for now, we're going to have a send-off for the end of the book of Exodus and the next part of the journey on. Here we are on my website, Midrash.Harabah, where I've put all of my midrashim for the Torah portions. I'm not going to be dealing with the whole Torah portion Pekudei. It begins here in the book of Exodus, verse 21. I suggest for those of you who have the time to go in and look at this parasha in the website Sefaria, where you can see the Hebrew and the English side by side. I'd like to, before I go back to my own Midrash, I'd like to read one more section here from the book of Exodus. And it's about the fact that when he set up the enclosure around the tabernacle and put up the screen for the gate of the enclosure, when Moses had finished the work, the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the presence of Yud-He Vav-He, I usually use Yud-He Vav-He in my translations, and you can see here an explanation. There are a lot of things that you get from the Sefaria website, and this is one of them. I use Yud-He W-He, meaning the Tetragrammaton or the 4-letter name of God. And at that point, when everything was finished, the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the presence of Yud-He Vav-He, our Lord or our God, or however you want to call it, filled the tabernacle. Now, in case you're interested in my take on theology, I have a link to a page that I use to discuss it. There are many different things, especially the ideas here in this wonderful lecture by Professor Shaya Cohen from Harvard about the image of God and the name of God. As I say here, deal with things metaphorically or poetically, but not literally in terms of talking about the God and revelation. In any case, the verse 34 and 35 in Exodus are the two that I'm going to use for the beginning of my midrash to sort of begin. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, so the presence of Yud-He Vav-He filled the Mishkan. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting when the cloud enveloped it, and the presence of Yahweh filled the Mishkan. Wouldn't we all like to witness that cloud descending, this is my midrash, and settling on the ancient transportable shrine, Mishkan? That fantastic cloud wasn't actually present. It was all an illusion. Only our ancestors' perceptions altered from time to time, but not the reality of God. Although we are limited by our physical form, we are free to let our thoughts flow out and around us. If we were to be aware of each breath, we could not function. Yet each breath is real, whether or not we are mindful of it. When our thoughts surge and expand, we can be where God abides, everywhere, past, present, and future, full circle within the cosmos. I have much more to my midrash, But I like to think of these things and of the idea of full circle within the cosmos. Yes, I'm calling this last parasha, this last Torah portion of Exodus, Parashat Pekudei, I'm calling it a send-off. And you can see that this is those pillars of clouds that will be mentioned at the end of the book of Exodus. And at the end of the book of Exodus, we talk about the diagram of the tabernacle again. It's been called a perfectly orchestrated harmony. And what we see here is a quote from Robert Alter's a discussion of the tabernacle in his book of 5 books of Moses. Human labor, scrupulously following a divine plan, creates an ordered space that mirrors the harmony of God's creation. That to be able to bring this to fruition, it really took a lot of work. If you read the whole parasha and the parasha before, and you'll see how meticulously everything has to be carried out. And this is just one of the depictions of this tabernacle. And here I think of this laboratory where recently they finished constructing the James Webb Telescope as another perfectly orchestrated harmony. It's a contemporary example, this is from the NASA site, of our labor scrupulously following specifications to create the mirrors for the James Webb Telescope. That's my idea, that if we have the telescope, isn't it just the same in terms of the way we have to deal with it? Here's a diagram of how the telescope is put together. I do want to mention that there are precious metals, many precious metals used in the creation of the James Webb Telescope. Now, as it says in NASA, it will be the premier observatory of the next decade, serving thousands of astronomers worldwide. Now, we won't physically go anywhere with this interstellar observatory, but we will be able to see things in space. And it's an amazing telescope. Here it is as it looks when it will be all deployed. Of course, this is in the laboratory and not this is not in space. And it's the NASA site continues, it will study every phase in the history of our universe, ranging from the first luminous glows after the Big Bang to the formation of solar systems capable of supporting life on planets like Earth, to the evolution of our own solar system. In some ways, I believe looking at those plans we saw of the tabernacle is our way of looking back into, as they call it, the history, the evolution of our own people. That after the ideas of the Exodus and the revelation at Mount Sinai, then there was something else needed. We may not be able at this point with our technology to go into the solar system, to go past the solar system, to go out into space and to see all these things, but we apparently now have the capabilities to send out a telescope like the James Webb Telescope. And it, of course, was launched on December 25th, 2021. And this is a depiction of the launch. And this is back to the book of Exodus. And this is our biblical send-off for the end of the book of Exodus. When the cloud lifted from the tabernacle, the Israelites would set out on their various journeys. But if the cloud did not lift, they would not set out until such a time as it did lift. This is from the Jewish Study Bible by Berlin and Brettler. I would like to say, this is quoted, this is from Exodus 40, 36 to 37. I would like to say that this cloud that came out of those rockets as the James Webb telescope was launched into space reminds me of the pillar of cloud. And of course, as we know, if there's no liftoff, our journey in space does not begin. It's an amazing send-off for the end of the book of Exodus. I hope you enjoyed my introduction to my Midrash to Parashat Pekudei. A link will be below this video in the description. And I hope you take a little time to read this Torah portion, because it really isn't that long. It's the last few chapters of the book of Exodus. And I hope that in spite of everything that is going on around us, you have some time to have a Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Pekudei.